So, hello everyone, and welcome to our last panel of the day on climate adaptation. We have to start now. I'm Clara. I'm a nature-based solution specialist and also a fellow here at YCL Youth Climate Leaders and also a YCL course consultant. I'm going to moderate this incredible panel. And we have here with us today Érica Tavares from Ecoangola, Sergio Margulis from IISS, and Joshua Amponsem from the Global Center on Adaptation, and Unelker Maoga from Konservation. And we're very happy to have you here today at the DCP, which is an all-day virtual summit to celebrate and catalyze professional accelerating solutions to the climate crisis. And we're having a day full of networking activities, keynote presentations, Q&As, and a climate career fair as well. So I would like to start this panel by hearing a bit from each one of you, starting with Unelker. So Unelker, you are a conservationist and community developer from Kenya, a YCL fellow, and One World Ambassador, grant recipient from the Kenya Community Development Foundation, and founder of Konservation. So, Unelker, can you please talk about your experience as a community developer in Kenya and how initiatives that you have been involved with, such as conservation and the Green Belt movement, can help Kenya to adapt to existing climate impacts?
Hi, thank you, Clara. So as you mentioned, my name is Unelker. I am from Kenya, and I was a previous YCL fellow 2 years ago. I started working in conservation when I joined the Green Belt movement, which was founded in 1977 by Wangari Maathai, who's the late Nobel Peace Prize winner. And she had a vision to plant 51 million trees in central Kenya with marginalized women. And they achieved this goal. And being a board member of the organization at a very young age inspired me to start my own local nonprofit, which is Konservation with a K. And at Konservation, we raise awareness about environmental stewardship, and we inspire young people to be involved in sustainable development. So very briefly, I'll just talk about what Konservation has done in the past 3 years. We have rural-based projects that raise awareness about climate change, where we teach kids in schools from agricultural communities about climate change and its impact. We also have projects that increase access to clean technologies like solar lamps to women in kiosks who live in places that don't have access to electricity. And then finally, we also have a project that empowers women by encouraging them to get involved in social enterprise. So that's a brief of what Konservation has done in the past 3 years. And we have partnerships with YCL, with Green Belt Movement, with National Geographic, and they have done a great deal in terms of helping us inspire other young people and get volunteers to come on board and work with us.
Thank you very much, Unelker. This is amazing. And I would like to move on to Joshua. Joshua, he's originally from Ghana. He's a climate advocate focused on climate change adaptation, circular economy, and disaster risk reduction. He has over 5 years of experience in the private sector, consulting, project management, and organization development. He has served as an advisor to the UN Youth Envoy's Office in the planning and delivering of the first UN Youth Climate Summit, and currently is working as a youth fellow at Global Center on Adaptation. Thank you so much, Joshua, for being here. And I would like to know if you can please tell us a bit more about your personal trajectory and about the work of the Global Center on Adaptation, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Clara, and happy to be here. And thanks to everyone watching and listening in. So as Clara said, I'm a youth fellow at the Global Center on Adaptation. And in terms of personal trajectory, I will start by saying that my activism started from my bachelor program back in Ghana, where I work with my fellow students to sort of take education out of the classroom and into communities, where we work with communities on what we studied in the classroom. And through that, I built a lot of interest in working with community members towards solutions to challenges that they face, which typically they have sort of a lot of insights already. And it's very useful to bring the classroom theoretical knowledge to complement what is already existing, to make it either more efficient or to update it to become more resilient to whatever challenge they may have. And from there, of course, quickly build a strong network locally and internationally. Started engaging at climate conferences, being at the COP, at the subsidiary meetings in June in Germany, and also realized the need, also bringing it back to the topic of professional development and young people, also realized the need to develop much further in terms of practice, but also in terms of knowledge and research in this space. So I furthered my knowledge. I started doing consulting for private sector initiatives in the green sector. One of the challenges I had to deal with, because not everything is, of course, smooth and all good. One of the challenges I had to deal with personally was the factor of age and the system where I live in, where a young person cannot have the best idea to share on the table, given the circumstances and the meeting you find yourself in. If you have a lot of gray hairs in the room, whatever brilliant idea you have, you might have to hold on until you get to identify who is the most open person to chat to, right? And then during the lunch break or whatever break you have, you go and try to sell your idea over there. So this is one of the challenges I had to deal with as a young person and a young professional. But I think a way of also overcoming that was also to increasingly not give up and to keep showing up, keep presenting, keep talking, keep raising my hand up when the opportunity comes up, and keep voicing those concerns. And I think at some point, it becomes not negligible that you have to be listened to. So this was sort of the path. And of course, the international community, different cultures approach young people differently. And one thing that I saw very useful is that even though generally we say that in Global South, we have huge governance challenges in terms of how young people engage with government and with business leaders, it's also very interesting that Global South, like say from me from Ghana, if I meet someone in the governance level from Brazil, we connect much easier than my own government or representative at a conference. So these are all opportunities that I had to leverage on to sort of penetrate the space, get to work with organizations beyond my current scope, which is organizations in Ghana and projects in Ghana, and to be able to sort of support initiatives and projects beyond that. Part of that was just to bring it forward, 2018, I started focusing more on adaptation. And this was because I realized that even though there's a lot of efforts going on with climate action, there was a missing gap in terms of people who we need to protect now and people that need sort of security and resilience today, not tomorrow, not 50 years, not 10 years. So whatever report I read, and being it IPCC, being it different big reports, always had like a time frame. We said, oh, we have this amount of time and we need to do something. If not, things get really bad. But in listening to that, I also knew that I also have people that I know in communities who needed those things today, and they couldn't wait for another 5 years or even another 2 years. They needed to have response and actions now. And also realizing that disaster response or responding to these events in a very active and ad hoc way doesn't really ensure safety of the people in the long term. And hence, sort of my focus then became very largely on supporting adaptation to protect lives and not just put the whole responsibility on mitigation or whole responsibility on general development practices, which have been existing for quite a long time and has not really delivered substantial outcomes to communities who are really on the front lines of the effects of climate change. So I authored a report on the role of young people in adaptation with the title Adapt for Our Future. I will share the link. And this report was to say that if you're going to get a better future where communities are safe, where young people today who live in the future are going to be safe, then they need to be part of the planning and implementation of adaptation policies right from day one. And this also, of course, opened the space for me to get in touch with more institutions and organizations working in this field. And hence also GCA was a very instrumental partner at this point, the Global Commission on Adaptation, because they funded this report. And then following that, wanted to really take the outcomes of the report forward. And hence the Global Center on Adaptation in the Netherlands invited me as a youth fellow to sort of see how to bring the outcomes of the report and make them actionable, so that we can really put focus on young people and climate adaptation. So that brings me to where I am now as a fellow at the GCA, and I can sort of throw more light on adaptation and young people and any other thing that we have to discuss in this meeting. Happy to be here, and thank you, Clara.
Thank you so much, Joshua, and we can go deep on your role in GCA. A little further on this panel. So now I would like to introduce Sergio Margulis. Sergio is a senior research associate in IISTES, International Institute for Sustainability. He's a former secretary at Sustainable Development Secretariat, Strategic Affairs, and the presidency, and has worked as lead environmental economist for the World Bank. Sergio has also coordinated the Adaptation Thematic Chamber for the Brazilian Forum on Climate Change. So Sergio, welcome, and can you please summarize a bit the main adaptation challenges globally and in Brazil, which professional opportunities might be related to overcoming them? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Clara, and the YCL for the invitation. I clearly don't belong to the YCL group per se, but I'm very happy for the invitation and to share a bit of some experience in the theme. As you've mentioned, Clara, I've been working for quite a while on climate change issues, specifically on adaptation. And we have challenges ahead indeed. I think that the most difficult problem in terms of adaptation is understanding and dealing with the large uncertainties about climate change. So when we ask, well, you're adapting to what? What are the changes in climate that we have to adapt to? Well, that's the starting point. And as we all know, we know that the globe is, the planet is warming up, but where exactly, at what speed exactly, and more importantly, the other effects, specifically rainfall changes, changes in acidification of the oceans, impacts on biodiversity, sea level rise. There's a lot of uncertainty, not about their existence, but their timing, their specific location, et cetera, and what are exactly the impacts of these things on humans and the ecosystems, on animals, and the infrastructure. So that is the big challenge. If we knew exactly what was coming, it would be relatively easy, or okay, we are prepared to some extent to handle most of these things, because the strategies for adaptation, they already exist. You know, it's the things involved in adaptation, and that's the one thing which I praise as the most important thing about adaptation, is that adaptation is essentially development. There are very few things that distance the two. You adapt basically means you increase your resilience to shocks, to climate shocks. And if you have that capacity, you are in a good position. You are in a developed position, as opposed to being very vulnerable, being poor, being in slums, being in very vulnerable areas near the coast, floodable areas, etc. So the challenge is so the issues about adaptation is, creating this resilience is developing, is putting infrastructure, whether it's green infrastructure, whether it is hard, heavy infrastructure, improving drainage systems and preparing communities for the worst, and all the kinds of adaptation actions that we have in front of us. So that is we can do it, but we have to be very aware of what is coming to us. And we have to start immediately, as the theme of this event is called, because first, we don't have a second planet. So if we fail somehow, we don't have a second place to go to. We'll have to stay here no matter what. So it's probably not a bad idea that we first take good care of this environment and this planet that we have. And adapting means taking early actions, be precautious in the sense of, let's not bet on the possibility that, well, maybe it's not going to be so bad. I think we should, on the contrary, think that we are on a pessimistic path because we have too much to lose. And so the early action is smart. And there are so many things that we can do and should do, even if you're not so sure about the specific climate impacts. So increasing resilience, developing, improving infrastructure, educating people, having access to sanitation, all these things are empowering people, improving livelihoods, and increasing resilience. So there are too many things, protecting the environment, replanting trees and reforestation, so many actions that we know are called win-win. And we have to bet on those, even if we don't know exactly what's coming, but on those we can start. So in summary, the challenge is quite big. We wish, and we have to improve our knowledge about what is exactly coming in each locality, etc., improving our knowledge about the climate change itself and its impacts. But we have to start, and we have a lot to do. First, the issue is about how to balance between mitigation and adaptation, but both are on the table. So it's not one at the expense of the other. We'll have to do work on both. And on the specific issue of adaptation, absolutely. There are a lot of things that we need to start, beginning with knowledge, dissemination of information, and doing the things that are win-win with co-benefits that are leading to development and increasing overall resilience.
Perfect, Sergio. Thank you so much. Indeed, this is a very complex topic, and we need as many people from as many sectors as we can to work in cooperation, co-creation, in searching for a win-win work, as you mentioned. So I would like to move on to Érica. Érica is here representing Ecoangola. She's a YCL fellow from Angola. Érica is a biologist, ecologist, and co-founder of Ecoangola. Before that, she has worked as research intern at the Institute for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Dynamics in the University of Amsterdam. She defends human rights and biodiversity with the mission of increasing environmental awareness in Angola, alerting about the environmental degradation caused by human activities and promoting sustainable practices, conservation and environmental education. So welcome, Érica. I'm very happy to have you here. So could you please tell us more about your trajectory and what motivates you to work for a more resilient and just Angola?
Hi, Clara. Thank you very much for this introduction. And I just want to make it clear, I did work as a research intern, but when you said it, it seemed like I did a lot, but it was just a small research. It's not something that big, but thank you. Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure, first of all, to be in this panel and sharing all these amazing histories with all of you. And I'm really, honestly, when I was listening to all of you, it really gave me a feeling of hope. Because I feel like most of you environmentalists, ecologists, people working with climate sometimes have like a feeling that we're not doing enough. But when I meet more people like all of you, it really gives me a lot more hope to continue on this journey. I mean, I feel like we're making the movement. We're part of the movement to make this world a better place. About my trajectory, I was born and raised in Angola, and I was privileged to have moved to Europe when I was 17. I moved to England, and then I started doing my university in environmental biology. And when I started, I actually did not have an understanding, like the full scope of what was going on. Back home, when I was in Angola, I mean, I'm in Angola right now, but I was saying back then, I was always seeing like a lot of pollution, especially air pollution, like the waste being burned, a lot of biodiversity, how can I say, extinction, because I was seeing a lot of wild animals being killed to be sold, and there were a lot of little things that I was seeing. They were not right, but I really did not know why. I didn't really understand why, although I always had this feeling inside me that I wanted to help do something about it. And only when I was outside Angola that I started meeting more people that were doing biology, that were understanding more about this, because they had the exposure of what was going on before. It really opened a lot of my perspective and my views. And with that time, I started feeling like I was starting my purpose. I feel that I found now my purpose, which is to actually work in Angola and help people wake up about this, and not just wake up in a sense that I'm going to be like a radical activist or anything, more in a way of spreading education, spreading awareness. I feel like when I was in Europe, and before I started working with Ecoangola, before we founded 1 year ago, I was feeling that what I was doing with research, because I liked research, I felt that it really was not enough. And what I was finding out, the more I was studying and understanding this whole green movement, I was seeing, man, we already know a lot of the solutions. The problem is not actually research. The problem is using that research for impact. And last year, when I co-founded Ecoangola, we started just publishing articles online, but although we know that most of Angolans do not have access to internet, for example, it was a starting point. It was a starting point to actually make us find a lot more people in Angola who were engaged with this, who were studying biology, who were also having the same feeling I had, or even understanding more that I did or that I do, and connecting all of these people. So the movement that we have now in Angola, this green movement, I'm going to say was quite dead, at least for me, someone that already wanted to be part of it, but I just didn't know how. So we founded Ecoangola in July last year, and ever since we have created this whole community of environmentalists, biologists, people doing research, a lot of university students. And then we realized that most of these things are not just done because, first of all, yes, there's a whole difficulty in having infrastructure. There's also the political side. We noticed that our leaders are not sensitive to the impact that we have in environmentalists. Everything they think is, okay, we have to actually grow the economy to make the country develop. But when we're doing that, we're actually wasting our natural capital to build money, but we're not using that money to build communities. So you have also this problem. And then we have the fact that we also have a big gap in education. Even people who study in Angola, for example, you conclude your studies, but then you don't have experience. When you don't have experience, you cannot work with that. And then people are too used to working for someone, not to create their own opportunities, and also because of this big gap we have in the structure of Angola. So what I thought is, okay, so why not give this tool to people? So I want to be used as a tool to make this movement grow in Angola, to create stronger connections, to bring this sensitivity to the political side. And that's what we started doing with Ecoangola. We now became a very, very big community, and we connect to a lot of other conservation organizations, to other conservation organizations and environmental education organizations in Angola. And what we want to do is, we don't just want to go and talk, about climate change, because we have a lot of social issues here, like poverty and hunger. So I cannot go to someone and talk about climate change when they get home and they don't have food to eat. I need to find a way to make them understand that the impacts of climate change also impact the food that they don't have at the end of the day. So how can I make this connection with people to work against climate change and at the same time make their lives better, make them have more dignity? So these are the challenges that we have at hand. These are the things that we're doing. We started working. We have now a new project for permaculture, for sustainable agriculture, where we want to do education in communities, especially rural communities. We want to, we made some projects to, how can I say, we're quite inclusive, and to be honest, we're just exploring what we can do with the limited resources we have, because Ecoangola doesn't have financial aid yet, because we're not an organization yet, especially because there's also a lot of bureaucracy in Angola to create an NGO. But these are the challenges that we're finding in just 1 year of experience. And these little projects that we're working on are actually making this a movement in Angola. We're pushing the other organizations forward. We're making people, the ones that already have this sensitivity, we're making them take a step. And the ones that don't, we want them to take a step. And what we want, just like Sergio Margulis said, is to help communities, especially vulnerable communities, have resilience to climate change, especially because Angola is at a geographical position that will face, and it's already facing, the impacts of climate change, harsh impacts. So I think that if I explain a lot, I'm going to continue this and non-stop, because I talk a lot, I tend to talk a lot, but this is like an introduction of what we're doing. And I'm just going to say that I'm a student for all of this, and what I'm trying to do is use the tools I've gained with this privilege I had to bring it here to work with the communities. I just arrived in Angola 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of political tension, especially because I'm an activist. So it's quite hard for you to bring a lot when some people don't want this to happen. Some people really just want people to continue in a box, to not change anything. And there's like many difficulties, and I bet especially my African brothers and sisters who are here might feel the same in their own countries. But these are the challenges we have, and being young brings us this energy that we need to fight for this, and fight for this for the now. We talk about a lot resilience for the future. We also need resilience for the present. We need to build this resilience for the now. Thank you. I'll talk a lot more after. I don't know if you're there, Clara or Cassia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Érica, for sharing with us this work here you've been doing with Ecoangola. It's so inspiring, and we need so much more of that in our world. So thank you very much. And I would like to move back to Unelker. And Unelker, you were talking about some projects that you have been um, developing. And I would like to know if you could please describe a little bit more of the projects that your organization is implementing in Kenya. You mentioned gender issues. So how do you combine gender empowerment and conservation in places such as Nyamira country? And finally, what do you think someone who wants to work with conservation in Africa can now get to a closer career in the climate sector, please?
I'll start by answering your second question and then go back to the work we are doing at Konservation. So just to start off, for young professionals wanting to establish a career in conservation practice, I would say that the Global South has a lot of opportunities. And this is because specifically in Sub-Saharan Africa, there are many problems, and not just in conservation, but across the sector. There are many problems in governance, in the medical field, in access to services. And these problems create a space where we need solutions. So many young people should leverage on the problems that exist in the Global South and use them to create solutions and build a career out of those solutions. So just briefly to mention, if a young person is interested in getting into climate change adaptation or mitigation from a scientific perspective, I would say for starters, in 2015, the IPCC announced that they had a shortage of climate data from Africa. And that in itself is an opportunity for young people to get skilled professionally in climate science and work for organizations that need data within their country on climate change. And another field which many young people get into is activism. But one of the problems with activism is that it doesn't pay in many cases, and it's not organized. So I would say to young people who are interested in activism and advocacy that they need to define what it is they want to provide solutions to, and then organize themselves into either nonprofits or movements that are providing a solution in a systemic way, because organization is the only platform in our day and age which receives funding from external bodies. So it's very important for young people to align the work they do with with what needs to be done, and in that sense get funding for their movement or for their nonprofits. So just to end, I'll quickly mention the work we do at Konservation. We started in 2017 as a local project, but then we later developed into a local nonprofit. We currently have 4 grassroots projects, and we work in rural communities because we believe that rural agricultural communities stand to suffer the most from climate change. So our work in rural communities with young people is to help inspire them to be involved in sustainable development, to inspire them to create solutions to the problems that they have in their communities. We started off with a climate change education project where we created a curriculum that teaches young people in schools about what climate change is. We talk about the impacts of climate change, the science of climate change, and adaptation strategies to climate change. And we've taught about 2,000 students in about 23 schools. And our work in climate change awareness and education is funded by National Geographic. We also have a project on climate smart agriculture, which encourages farmers to adopt regenerative agriculture. But this project is still in its pilot phase. We haven't established it because we try and make sure that our projects are developed with the local communities we're working in, and we understand that that takes time. Our third project is on clean technologies, and what we do at Konservation is that we create a supply chain to solar lamps to rural villages that don't have access to electricity. And how we do this is that we supply the solar lamps to women-owned kiosks, because we understand that women are more responsible in the household sector. So we work with women to increase these lamps. And as we increase access to energy, we also make sure that we are passing on the conservation message and try raise awareness about the need to transition to green technologies. And then finally, we also have a project on natural cosmetics, where we hire women from marginalized communities to make cosmetic products like lip balms and soaps, which we sell.
Thank you so much, Unelker. I would like to move on now to Joshua again. So Joshua, please could you tell us what were the main challenges that you have faced when you started your career in the field? And what tips do you have for young people who are beginning their journey now?
Thank you very much. I think, I'll go with what Unelker already said. It's a bit more around organizing. I see this as a big challenge for most of the young people that as colleagues, friends, volunteers I work with, that most often there's not so much of a difference between who got the job and who didn't get the job, who got the opportunity and who didn't get it, in terms of knowledge per se. But I think the difference has to do with organizing and being able to also know what the sector expects of a young professional. And this is why professional development programs are very, very important. To be able to give people the skills that you typically wouldn't get in a classroom. Two, to give the exposure, which is beyond what you get from a classroom. But those exposures also shape you in terms of where do you focus your career on. What are the key things you want to achieve as a young person, as a young professional? You commit a lot of energy every day to work on something. What is the end goal? And if when these pieces are in place, it makes it much easier for a young person to really thrive. And these are some of the challenges I have seen with many young people. On an individual level, I think that even though some of these challenges were there, because I also, aside my work with the GCA, I also started an NGO, and we were, I think already, we started in 2014. It took us quite some time to understand the sector, understand the space. And this is because at the early stages, we couldn't get anyone to properly sort of learn from, anyone who have been through the process more regularly, more thoroughly, who could say that, okay, this is the right way to go. And I think this is what I see with a lot of young people now in Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, that every new day there's a new NGO, there's a new initiative, there's a new something every day. But many of these do not take the time to learn from the existing structures. And this becomes a big challenge. And also to the youth movement in general, that even though we are very radical, we are very smart, we are very fast with technology, we know our stuff, but also there are things we don't know. And there are things we have to learn from the current institutions. And unless we really harmonize these two, we advocate that the older generation and institutions must listen to us, but we also need to listen to them. So it has to be like a two-way dialogue where we both listen to each other and find the best way forward. And this is something that is very, very important. And this is what is shaping the work that I'm part of at the GCA. So the work at the GCA is basically to set up a youth adaptation network, which we put together. Now, this network has been built with young people themselves, but with a global center on adaptation, giving room for young people to say what they really want and what they need. And we've held consultations across different regions of the world. we are not saying that youth is just one big group, but also acknowledging that young professionals are different from self-employed people, and they are different from founders, and different from people who are doing like a master's program in research or doing their PhD. These different categories of youth have different needs, and this must be acknowledged. And coming back to the point around how do we get more young people to thrive, to support adaptation, and as Sergio mentioned, I completely agree that adaptation is really about having the capacity with you. If you have the capacity, you can better act. If you have low capacity, if you are poor, if you are living by the river, you don't have money even for your livelihood, you can't insure yourself. If anything goes wrong, you are the most affected, even though someone is living there too, but they live in a better house with a good building codes, they have health insurance, they have insurance for their property, and all these things can be better accumulated for everyone if they have the skills that are needed for them to earn and to be able to build these capitals, whether social capital, whether financial capital. All these are needed, and it comes through training and being able to build the skills of individuals. And this is where the Global Center on Adaptation is focusing on now through a series of programs which we are going to launch at the upcoming Climate Adaptation Summit in January 2021. And these programs are shaped by what young people told us directly when we had consultations with them. And we will encourage for other organizations to really open the space to work with young people this way, that they are able to say, this is what we need in Latin America. We need more funding for or to pilot projects, or we need increased funding to participate in international dialogues, or we want more professional development opportunities with regional institutions. And this is what we need to build our skills. And this will open up the space for young people to be skilled, to be exposed, to have the knowledge, but also to have the practical experience to understand the current system we are living in. And I strongly agree with Érica when she said, when you start, you don't really know what exactly are the challenges. The more you learn about it, the better you know how to act. And we need to provide such of those opportunities to everyone to learn more and to know how to better act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. And we can also talk a bit more about these opportunities that GCA is providing for the youth later on. And let's move on again to Sergio. So Sergio, you have already spoken and given a great contextualization of the challenges of addressing adaptation issues. So could you please talk a bit more now about the professional opportunities that might be created by implementing adaptation projects and policies, please?
Okay, thanks again, Clara. I have a little bit of a problem with this the question, because as we just said, you know, adaptation is largely development, and so the question would become, what are the promising fields when it comes to development? And the answer is all of them. Everything is precious. You have to be just very smart. You have to, you know, to sweat to get there. I mean, what is not relevant? Everything is completely relevant, from the early climate science, which there is obviously now a huge demand for professionals in this area. We have to greatly improve this, but it goes through everything. You know, the computers have to be much faster, and to, you know, as you know, the global circulation models, you know, the models that are anticipating the climate effects, etc. They require huge and increasing capacities to run it. So the technology in computer processing is absolutely needed. Ocean science, you know, what's going to happen with the oceans? It's such a big unknown. And the forest science, and the biodiversity science, and the economics of all these things. The science of materials. When you think about, you know, listen, we cannot build our homes still based on steel and cement and concrete. Come on, this is completely absurd. Let's be clear about this. You know, it doesn't make any sense that for you to be in a resilient home and a pleasant and hospitable place, you have to put iron, steel, and cement. This is totally unsustainable. It's demanding huge amounts of energy, and it doesn't even do the job. So, and then you have to put the heating or the cooling. So it's completely wrong. The glass that we use, the glass doesn't filter the rays, so it gets too hot. Or, you know, so the material science, the car, the automobiles that we build, or the buses that we drive, you know, you're transporting yourself who weighs 70 kilograms, but for you to go from A to B, you're also bringing with you 500 kilograms of steel and iron. It doesn't make any sense. You're transporting the car, not yourself. So we are in the year 2020. We have automobiles running for more than 100 years. Didn't they think of any transport means based on something very, very light and very, very resistant, so that, you know, you're protected and you can go at a decent speed? So, I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to things that we have to do to be better prepared and better adapted. But as I said, you know, it's about development. So what do I know about the future? What is the future of future technologies of using ocean water to run the world, or to use the solar energy to do absolutely everything we need, including food? I don't know. I mean, so I'm just stepping ahead. I'm sorry. So I sincerely believe you have to do what's in your heart and what you think you're comfortable with and what you know you're capable of. And this is the best advice I can give. And just do what you like. Don't do something, because the market is good for, I don't know, astronomy, so I'm going to do astronomy, but I hate physics. It doesn't work. So I mean, I'm not minimizing the importance of the market demands and the opportunities, but I think that the opportunities are here. So are more here than out there. So go for your own capacities and believe in yourself. I mean, I'm giving this more as an advice of an older person to you guys much younger. And I think this is it. I mean, in terms of, this is my sincere answer. We have so much to do, and all of these things are really about development, and they all bring resilience. And I'm just reinforcing what Joshua, Unelker, and Érica have already said. You know, it's poverty is at the center of this thing of adaptation. If the world was as rich as Japan, they handle all the huge climate events, you know, and they survive relatively well. I mean, they're not immune. There are losses. Some of them are dramatic, but they're much better prepared than, say, Bangladesh, for example. You know, or the better example is, since Érica is here, is to compare Holland and Bangladesh. These are two low-lying countries, and every time a typhoon or anything hits Bangladesh, is a big mess. A lot of people die just simply because they don't have the adequate infrastructure. Not that the infrastructure needs to be the Dutch style. We can do it cheaper, better, more intelligent. But okay, Holland does have the infrastructure, and people basically don't die of a simple sea level rise or a simple ocean event. And in Bangladesh is a problem. It's a big problem, because people don't have the resources and means to adapt and to get away with the problem. So it's inevitable. I mean, we have to have increasing this capacity is developing, and we have all the fields to improve. We have to improve ourselves in every way. And don't forget, we have to lower our consumption. Those who can consume, Érica was saying about, well, I cannot go to a poor peasant in Angola and ask him to talk about climate change when he doesn't have the food for the end of the day. And I completely agree with this. And we shouldn't be talking maybe to these people about it. We can inform them about how about their vulnerability and how eventually to help to protect, but nothing to do with mitigation. Mitigation is on the richer side, and the people who do consume and who cause the problem in the first place, and so have them minimize their emissions. But okay, I'm sorry, this is beyond the topic. Thank you, Clara. Sorry for a little digression.
No, thank you so much, Sergio. It's very important to bring this to the table because climate changes is such a large topic. It's this umbrella and everything comes under it. So everyone can and should be a climate professional. And you're completely right. And the solutions that are applied in one city or one country are not always the best for another country who has similar issues, like the example you gave from the Dutch people there from Holland, the Netherlands, and Bangladesh. But perhaps nature-based solutions could be a good solution for Bangladesh's issues. So moving on now again to Érica. Érica, you just graduated from the last course of the YCL course, and we would like to know what were your main takeaways from this experience, and how do you plan to bring these learnings to your community in Angola?
Thank you, Clara. Honestly, I feel like that course has impacted a lot in my life. I was doing a master's in investigation in Netherlands, and it really opened my eyes because I thought, well, although there's a lot of the scientific background that I know I don't know, but I feel that with what I already know, not saying it's enough, but with what I already know and having this community that can work towards action, I thought that making myself a better leader would have a much greater impact than making myself a better scientist. So I really started, even before I found the IOCL course, I was finding a lot of things about leadership, because having this whole community was making me think, well, if there's one person that needs to be strong, that needs to understand what we're doing, that needs to, create strategies and plans, and because I have a lot of people who look up to me, even though I don't feel comfortable with that, but oh well, I already put myself in that position without knowing. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of gaps that I have within myself as a leader. And most of the things that were taught, it's like at the beginning of the course, it was actually about purpose, finding myself, my personality, understand how I can use that into what I'm doing. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things, a lot of mistakes I was making, especially with the communication I was having with our volunteers, with the people outside, the having to be an activist, but when you're talking to like politicians, it's difficult to be an activist because they tend to take it into a very bad place. They tend to, this person is not really good for what we're trying to do. So I have to be a diplomat. I have to also make myself a better communicator, because I'm literally the bridge between the ones that make the decisions, the leaders of our country, and then the civil society, the people in our community, the people that want change, the people that want to work towards change. It also gave me a lot of perspectives about the similarities we have between Angola and I would say Africa in general and Brazil. We're facing a lot of the same issues, deforestation. I think Brazil is way forward in terms of energy transition. It's something that, although it would help a lot of Angola, they're still focused on oil. I don't know if you guys heard about the exploration of oil in the Okavango Delta. And they're supposedly, from the last news I saw, they were going to start it in December this year. And the Okavango Delta is literally the last untouched place on Earth. I think Amazon as well. But I was saying, like, super virgin, because I feel that the Amazon has a lot more tribes, but I don't want to say anything wrong, so maybe I'll just take that off. But maybe in Africa, I would say the last untouched place in Africa. And it's really hard for us as environmentalists trying to wake this thing up, and our leaders are still insensitive about the people who face these challenges of like the climate impacts. I feel like it's so hard for you not to see wherever you go in the cities, wherever you go, even outside cities, in the rural communities, you will literally see what's the real difficulties of these people. I see a lot of people moving because of droughts. I see a lot of people moving around because of floods, and it's happening everywhere. And how come our leaders are still putting certain politics that are actually against saving the environment, against saving this natural capital, when we have people who depend on it? For example, Luanda is the biggest city in Angola, and we have around 32 million people in Angola itself. And then just Luanda, which is the smallest province, but the biggest city, it has almost 10 million people. So it's full of people, but all of these people are running away from rural communities, most of the people, because they don't have the ways to do their life. They don't know how they will survive. So they come to the city to try and do something better. But here you also see a lot of poverty. You don't have enough jobs. You don't have you simply just don't have plans that could manage all these difficulties. And most of these difficulties also come from these unsustainable practices and decisions that are made by our leaders. So I feel that what we need really is to strengthen our leadership. We already have a lot of people who know a lot. We already have a lot of people who are working a lot, but we need strong leaders. We need to have this sensitivity for environmental causes, because every environmental impact that we make also have impacts on us, on our society, on our communities, and our people. So this is exactly what we need. I was even thinking about, we need to have a climate leadership program for politicians, for politics. We do. Our leaders who are there already, they probably don't want to leave. So why not teach them what they should do? I'm sorry to say this like this. It's going to look like, I feel like I'm really smart, but it's not that. It's really something that I'm seeing. We have a big gap, and it's worldwide. It's not just here in Angola or in Africa. I see that it's happening in a lot of places. Look at Trump. I mean, that's environmental insensitivism. So I think that's a lot from what I can say. Thank you. And really, thank you for this panel. It's important for us to have this dialogue. I'm already making some connections with the people here. And I hope that not just this talk, but from this talk comes a lot of more of positive actions, a lot more of leaders that might see this and start making actions in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Érica. It has been amazing to hear the four of you, and especially hearing about these bottom-up initiatives that the natural leaders that we have within our communities. So we have the power, and we can pressure the governments and the other sectors to move towards a more sustainable world. So I really would like to move on with this conversation for hours and hours, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. So I just want to let people know that we are now launching today the YCL course for 2021. The applications, they are now open on YCL's website. The YCL course is a learning journey, as Érica was talking, and to unleash youth careers in climate. So we have now for this week a promotional prize. And if you don't speak Portuguese, this is not a problem. We have a form on our website for you to indicate in which language you feel more comfortable to engage in this course, and we can develop it together with you and co-create it. So I would like to thank very much my 4 colleagues here, Érica, Sergio, Joshua, and Unelker, for joining us and sharing with us your amazing projects and your ideas. And I wish we have more conversations and engagements like this in the future. So thank you all. And we're going to share your everything that you have disclosed here, the opportunities for the youth and of your social networks, and to strengthen our networking and our net here for the climate. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.